Dear Mother, they told us the Americans were savages. Fat, lazy people who ate meat with their hands and lived without honor. We believed them. Until the day we stood on their soil. I still remember the smell of the shipyard. Oil, bread, and something sweet in the air. When they handed us those so-called burgers, we laughed. Meat between bread? Disgusting, we said. But hours later, sitting by a warm fire in a camp without walls, I took a bite. The taste. It wasn't just food. It was freedom, something I didn't recognize yet. Tonight I write this under a sky without bombs. And I wonder, Mother, what if everything they told us was a lie? Dear Mother, the sea has never looked so cruel. Not because of the storms, but because it carried us here, to the enemy's shore. The ship creaked as it approached the American coast. Hundreds of German women stood silently on deck, their gray uniforms stiff from salt and fear. The horizon glowed, not red with fire, but golden. They blinked. New York was rising ahead of them, untouched by war, glittering like a dream they weren't meant to see. For months, Allied broadcasts had promised them punishment. The Americans will make you slaves, their officers had said. Yet when the gangway dropped, no one shouted or raised a weapon. The first sound that reached their ears wasn't boots. It was music. A brass band playing Stars and Stripes Forever. Private Anna Wrights, 22, clutched her bag of letters and whispered, "They're mocking us." Beside her, Greta shook her head. Nope, look. American Red Cross nurses waited with blankets. Soldiers guided them gently, not pushing, not yelling. The women expected interrogation, barking orders, humiliation. Instead, they were given cups of steaming coffee. The aroma hit like a memory from before the war. Sweet, roasted, unreal. "Drink," one nurse said softly. "It's cold out." Anna hesitated, then tasted. It was the first warmth she'd felt since surrender. She hated that it made her want to cry. They were marched, not in chains, but in rows, past harbor cranes taller than church steeples. Workers waved from the docks. Children on bicycles followed, shouting, "Hey, Krauts! Welcome to America." But their voices weren't hateful. They were curious, even playful. The women couldn't understand it. How could the victors smile? The smell of the port, tar, iron, bread, diesel, filled the air. Everything was moving, alive, efficient. Freight trains thundered past, each car marked U.S. Army supplies. It was said that America produced more steel in a week than Germany in a month. And here it was, proof in motion. Anna's eyes caught a factory banner. Victory through work, 24 hours a day. She whispered, "They never slept, did they?" At the checkpoint, the women were counted, registered, and, unexpectedly, served food. Paper plates. Thick patties of meat inside soft white bread dripping with sauce. The Americans called it a burger. The German women stared at it with disgust. Greta sniffed hers. "Animal feed," she muttered. "No real kitchen would serve this," others agreed. Some tossed it aside. But hunger gnawed and curiosity won. Anna took one careful bite. The flavor exploded. Smoke, salt, fat, sweetness. It didn't taste like victory or defeat. It tasted like something they hadn't known in years. Life. Still, she forced herself to scowl. "They want to fatten us before the camps," she said bitterly. But deep down, a question began to form. A dangerous one. What if they don't hate us? As night fell, the women were herded gently again onto trains. No barbed wire, no guards, no shouts. Just tickets, luggage stacked neatly. Windows open. Anna pressed her hand against the glass. The city lights reflected in her eyes like stars over water. "Dear Mother," she wrote that night in her small notebook, "I thought the sky over America would look foreign. But it's just blue, dew blue, almost unreal." The train whistle screamed, long and mournful. The women looked at each other and whispering in disbelief. "If this is captivity," one said softly, "then what was freedom?" "Dear Mother, the train is moving, but no one is watching us. No guards, no rifles, just windows. and a world that refuses to hate us. The wheels screeched softly against the rails as the train left the harbor behind. Dozens of German women sat in silence, their reflection flickering in the glass. Every few seconds, an electric light flashed across their faces, proof that this land had power to waste. Back home, the night had been black, rationed electricity, curfews, fear. Here, the darkness was decorated. Neon signs flickered through the window. Coca-Cola, Texaco, American Diner. Gas stations glowed like beacons. Billboards stretched for miles, tall, loud, unapologetic. The women whispered among themselves. "Maybe it's all for show," Greta muttered. "They knew we were coming. Then why are the children waving?" Anna replied, pointing. On the platforms they passed, American families stood under the station lamps, smiling, waving at the passing POW trains. Little girls threw paper flowers. A boy saluted. Not once did anyone spit or curse. It was not the reception the Reich had promised. The Americans had told the prisoners to relax. They'd reached Texas in 4 days. 4 days across a country so wide that even the sun seemed slower here. Each morning, attendants brought breakfast, eggs, toast, and, again, hamburgers wrapped in thin wax paper. The smell filled the compartments. At first the women refused. They whispered poison, mockery, but hunger softened pride. By the third morning, Anna found herself waiting for the taste. The bread was warm, the meat juicy, the coffee strong. She chewed quietly, almost guiltily. "Mother," she wrote in her diary, "these Americans eat like kings, and yet their soldiers smile. Their trains are not guarded. What sort of conqueror feeds the defeated?" She couldn't sleep. Outside the window, America kept unfolding, vast, confident, alive. Coal yards, freight lines, rows of identical houses with white fences. Even in the smallest towns they saw cars, shining new ones, not scavenged wrecks. When they passed through Pennsylvania, the train slowed. They saw a field filled with aircraft, hundreds, maybe thousands, wings gleaming under the sun. A U.S. officer walking the aisle noticed Anna's wide eyes. "P-51s," he said with a grin. "War's over. But we keep them ready." Anna nodded, pretending not to understand. But she did. This wasn't arrogance. It was a nation that had never been bombed. Later, as night fell, the women were told they could rest. No chains, no guards. Only conductors and Red Cross volunteers. The train stopped by a small diner in Illinois. American women served them pie through the windows. "Apple," one said cheerfully. "You'll like it." Anna didn't move at first. A German prisoner accepting food from an American housewife? It felt wrong, but when the woman smiled, genuinely, without pity, Anna reached for it. Warm crust, cinnamon, sugar. The taste hit her like a memory of home before Hitler. She wanted to thank the woman but didn't know the English words. Instead, she pressed her hand against the window and nodded. The woman nodded back. Inside the carriage, silence had turned to whispers, not of anger, but of confusion. "Are we still prisoners?" someone asked. "No," another replied softly. "We're guests who don't belong." The train roared on. By dawn, they crossed the Mississippi. Outside, mist rose over the water like smoke that didn't burn. Anna stared out, whispering, "The war took everything. But this land looks untouched." For the first time, she didn't feel hatred. She felt envy. "Dear mother, the earth here smells different. Warm, heavy, alive. Even the soil looks proud." After 4 days of motion, the train slowed. The rhythmic clatter softened into stillness. Outside stretched a sea of sunlight, flat plains, endless sky, and fields that seemed to breathe. The air smelled of dust and corn. Texas. When the German women stepped out, the horizon itself felt like a taunt. It wasn't gray like Europe's broken cities. It was gold. They had expected barbed wire, armed towers, barking dogs. Instead, they saw fences made of white wood, windmills turning lazily, and a road stretching into forever. A young American soldier waved from a jeep. "Welcome to Camp Hearn, ladies," he said in a polite drawl that none of them understood, but somehow it didn't sound cruel. Greta whispered, "Is this a camp?" Anna looked around. Long, neat rows of low buildings, gardens between them, even flowers. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe heaven looks like this. If heaven had guards." The buses that carried them to the compound passed through small Texan towns. Children ran alongside, waving small flags. On the porches, women hung laundry, colorful dresses, bright and clean. Cows grazed behind fences, their hides glossy and thick. Back home, their families boiled potato peels to survive. Here, farmers seemed to live like kings. A Red Cross nurse told them proudly, "This land feeds half the world." She wasn't exaggerating. In 1945, American farms produced more than 360 billion pounds of food. Cornfields stretched for miles, green oceans under a sun that never hid. Tractors moved like beetles through gold. Even the barns looked proud, painted fresh red, not burned black. Anna's stomach tightened. She remembered Berlin, soot, hunger, mothers begging soldiers for scraps. Here she saw cows fatter than some German children. When the bus stopped at a roadside diner, an American officer handed each woman an apple. Not a half-rotten one, not rationed, but full, red, heavy. Greta scoffed. "We had apples once," she said bitterly, "before the bombs." But Anna held hers as if it were glass. She could smell it before she bit, sweet, sharp, clean. "Dear Mother," she wrote that night, "the fruit in my hand was heavier than the medals we once dreamed of. I took one bite and cried." At Camp Hearn they were shown their quarters, tidy barracks, each with wooden beds, tables, even curtains. A kitchen nearby filled the air with roasted meat and onions. The women froze. One soldier noticed their fear. "You're safe now," he said gently. War's over, but the words didn't land. Could safety exist without punishment? Could peace come without revenge? That evening the camp bell rang. Dinner was served. Hamburgers again, with potatoes, gravy, and soft bread rolls. Most of the women still didn't trust it. A few tasted, pretending to despise it, but their eyes said otherwise. Anna took a small bite, then another. The bread was warm, the meat smoky, the butter melting on her fingers. No ration slips, no sirens. No shame. She looked at the American cook through the serving window. He smiled and nodded. "Plenty more," he said. Plenty. It was a word she'd almost forgotten existed. That night, as the stars rose over the Texas sky, Anna sat by the window of her barrack, the air still sweet with distant hay. She watched the camp lights shimmer like small suns, steady and endless. "Mother," she whispered, "they have so much that they don't even know the meaning of hunger." She looked at the apple core in her hand, still sticky with juice, and smiled through tears. Maybe, she thought, this is what power really looks like. Not fear, but abundance. A shout came from outside, an American sergeant calling the women for orientation. Anna stood up, heart pounding. "Tomorrow," he said, "you'll see how America really works." The women exchanged glances, half dread, half curiosity. Morning light fell across the camp like silk. Birds sang. Somewhere beyond the barbed wire, a radio played softly. Glenn Miller, they said. The German women woke expecting roll call, harsh voices, and commands. Instead, an American sergeant knocked gently on the door. "Breakfast, ladies. Don't be late. Breakfast. Not rations. Not scraps. Actual breakfast. Eggs, butter, coffee, and yes, the ever-present hamburger patty." Anna sat at the table in silence, staring at the white bread. She couldn't remember when food had last looked this. Earnest across from her, Greta muttered, "They're fattening us for propaganda." Anna answered quietly, "Then let them. At least the food tastes of peace." The camp was clean, painfully clean. Wooden walkways stretched between rows of huts. Each barrack had small gardens where prisoners were allowed to plant vegetables. Some women knelt there in the dirt, not from punishment, but from choice. It was something to do, something normal, inside a library. Rows of books in English and German, newspapers, even a sewing room. The guards, young men barely older than them, treated the women not like enemies, but like guests they didn't quite know what to do with. There were rules, of course. Curfews, boundaries, head counts. But no cruelty. When one woman fell ill, the camp medic came immediately, bringing real medicine, American pills wrapped in foil. Anna held one in her palm, blinking back tears. "This little thing," she whispered, "costs more than a loaf of bread back home." That afternoon, the women were gathered in a hall. An officer stood before them with a clipboard and a strange calmness. "You can sign up for classes," he said. "English, math, agriculture, maybe even art. It'll help when you go home." Home. The word hit like a wound reopening. Anna looked around. Some laughed bitterly, others looked away. But one woman, Elsa, raised her hand. "Why would you teach us?" she asked. "We are your enemies." The officer's answer was simple. "Because someday you won't be." The hall fell silent. Later, Anna found herself walking by the fence. The barbed wire shimmered under the sun, thin, almost symbolic. Beyond it, American children chased a ball, their laughter echoing through the warm air. "Dear Mother," she wrote that evening, "I don't know if we are prisoners or students in a world that wants to forgive." As night fell, she heard singing from the men's camp nearby, voices blending in German hymns. Then from the American side, another voice joined softly in English. For a moment, both sides sang together, separated only by wire. Anna closed her eyes. For the first time since 1939, she wasn't afraid. But peace has a sound, and so does truth. The next morning, the guards gathered them again. This time, one said, "You'll see how freedom thinks." The next morning, the women were escorted into a hall with rows of chairs and a projector. The guards dimmed the lights. The film began. American newsreels, not propaganda, just life. They saw soldiers returning home, women working in factories, black and white faces arguing, laughing, voting. A reporter said, "Freedom isn't perfect. It's a fight every day," the words echoed. In Germany, truth had been a whisper. Here, even disagreement was allowed to breathe. Later, an American sergeant placed a small book on Anna's table. "Take it," he said. "It's about democracy, the idea, not the politics." She opened it, expecting arrogance. Instead, she found questions, not orders. That evening, she sat under a tree outside her barrack, the book heavy in her lap. "Mother," she wrote, "we were raised to obey. They were raised to think. Maybe that's why they won." When a guard walked by, she asked quietly, "Why do you treat us kindly?" He smiled. "Because you're human. And because hate is expensive." Anna stared at him, unable to answer. For the first time, she felt something she couldn't name. Not guilt, not fear. Maybe hope. "Dear Mother," she ended that night, "freedom isn't what they promised us. It's better and harder. Dear Mother, tonight the guards called us by our names, not numbers. For the first time, I didn't feel like a prisoner." Christmas Eve arrived quietly over Texas. The air smelled of pine and fresh bread. Inside the camp hall, American soldiers had set long tables covered with white sheets. Candles flickered beside small paper stars made by local children. When the women entered, they froze. On the tables, roasted turkey, potatoes, apple pie, and bottles of Coca-Cola. An officer raised his glass. "Tonight," he said, "there are no sides, only people." Someone began to sing Silent Night in German. An American voice joined softly in English. 2 languages, 1 song. The melody rose above the fences, filling the Texas night with something that felt like forgiveness. Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Mother," she wrote later, "the enemy shared their food. And somehow I tasted peace." When dessert came, a soldier handed her a wrapped gift, a small notebook. For your thoughts, he said. She smiled weakly. I thought you'd take them, not give them. He laughed. Freedom means you keep what's yours. That night, Anna sat by her window, the notebook open and the sky endless above her. If this is the enemy, she whispered, then maybe we were fighting the wrong war. Dear mother, tomorrow we sail home. But I'm not the same woman who left Germany years ago. America didn't conquer me. It changed me. When the announcement came that the prisoners would be repatriated, silence filled the camp. Some cheered, others wept. Anna felt neither. She had waited years for freedom, yet part of her feared it now. The night before departure, she walked past the empty dining hall. The smell of burgers lingered. Meat, onions, bread, and smoke. Once she had called it disgusting. Now it smelled like safety. Outside, she saw the American flag stirring gently above the camp. For the first time, it didn't feel like an enemy symbol. It felt like a reminder that freedom wasn't about flags or power. It was about choice. The next morning, buses carried the women to the port. Townsfolk waved goodbye. Some handed flowers. Others tossed small paper bags of food through the windows. Fruit, bread, candy bars. Not as victory gifts, but as kindness. When the ship pulled away from the American shore, Anna opened her diary one last time. Mother, she wrote, they didn't punish us, though they could. They didn't hate us, though we hated them. They gave us food, books, laughter, and time to remember who we were before the war told us who to be. She closed her eyes and remembered the guard's words. Freedom means you keep what's yours. In her heart, she kept that, and the memory of a land that fed even its enemies. Months later, Germany greeted them with ruins, shattered homes, hungry faces, and silence. But Anna carried something invisible back across the sea. Compassion. She reopened her small notebook and began teaching village children to read, using the English book that once terrified her. When people asked her what America was like, she only smiled. Loud, bright, and kind, she said. They fed us hamburgers and somehow, hope. That night, she wrote her final entry. Freedom has a flavor, Mother. It's warm bread, laughter through fences, and mercy given without reason. Once you've tasted it, you can never forget. Strength of democracy, abundance, and humanity destroyed Nazi ideology. Not with bullets, but with kindness.